What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir stock, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Monday, March 18th. Alright guys, Palantir stock here on Friday, down 94 cents per share. That's minus 3.85% in regular trading hours. It's up about 5 cents, essentially flat here in the after hours. Let's take a look at this name, starting with our daily ritual, the volume profile analysis here on the 5-minute chart. Listen, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. My goal is to hit 5,000 by market open Monday. Appreciate you jumping aboard. Now let's take a look. So you guys know I'm always looking for 3 things to pull out a little bit more bias that we can't really see. It's kind of hidden bias, right? And we can't see it just by looking at the price movement. We have to dig into the volume profile, and it's kind of its own separate entity. It doesn't exactly have to match with the end result of the day, which is what makes it interesting. So what I'm looking for is big, obvious changes in volume that correlate with obvious changes in stock price, like bigger moves throughout the day. Okay, the bigger, more obvious ones. But the third one that I think most people kind of forget when they're doing a volume profile is it absolutely must, the volume, be out of context compared to what is typically expected at that time of day. Time of day is extremely important. All right. Now, the moves that I'm most curious about here on Palantir today. Honestly, I'm interested in this big fade that we got throughout the majority of intraday here. Oops, let's circle that. Really that entire fade, including this candle over here. And then I want to see the recovery, what the recovery of that move looks like. And I'm interested in that fade that we got into the close. So if we take a look, we'll go from left to right. Remember, we're looking for contextual, okay? Intraday, we did get a few little pops. We would ascend in terms of volume and then fade on any green candle. Ascend, fade on green candle. Candles, right? Pop a little bit and then fade into the green bars. So what's interesting is that, you know, we're not looking at a million shares of volume across the board on these red candles. It's not sticking out like a sore thumb, but there's certainly something there that tells me that the bears had some control there intraday. Now, on this little recovery move that we were talking about, right, let's get that out of the way. This recovery move, if we look at the volume on there, we did see a similar reaction in terms of the green bars, but the surrounding red bars throw that off a little bit in comparison to what we were looking at back here. So that is worth considering on that recovery move. And then this little bit of a fade that we got into the close there, right, which we essentially consolidated after hours. But that fade we got intraday into the close, this is highly contextual. This little ramp up into the close, that's very normal. So really nothing there that we can pull out. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to have questions about this first after hours bar with that massive green volume candle. What this is very common on stocks with a reasonably sized market cap. Of course, Palantir is that. And we've been seeing this a ton lately. You know what that is? At least what I think that is? Institutional and fund rebalancing. And the result of the candle actually wasn't very tremendous, was it? So this was likely just a battle of buying and selling, just rebalancing going on, triggered by the closing bell. That's what I believe that is, though I suppose I can't be 100% sure. Now, let's move on here to the self-fulfilling prophecy and psychological levels that I'm going to be paying very close attention to here on Palantir come Monday. So this is the 30-minute chart. Now, if you caught Thursday's video on Palantir, we discussed how we kind of gave up that 50-period moving average, right? We had claimed that back on Wednesday, gave it up then in pre-market on Thursday, tested it after the bell, and kind of faded. Today, we weren't even able to get a test. You know, bears, we talked about how you guys would want to see that 50 period curling over. And, you know, bulls, we have to acknowledge they did see that, right? They saw that 50 period curling over. Granted, this is the quickest moving average on the shortest time frame chart that we're going to look at here tonight. But bulls here, that actually does open up a relatively interesting opportunity come Monday here. We currently find ourselves about 2% of an upside move away from making a retest of that 50 period. So bulls, best case scenario, at least specific to the 30-minute chart here come Monday, I would love from a bullish perspective to see a break upside through that 50 period on high volume, a really low volume retest, like below average volume on the retest, and then back to above average, as much volume as possible, move back to the upside. Basically what that says is, hey listen, we're going to break this upside, big sample size agrees, small sample size makes a back test because people are unsure, and then a big sample size flows back in and says, yes, in the short term at least, we are holding that 50 period, reclaiming it as a short-term support level. Now, bears, your guys' best case scenario come Monday, at least on the 30-minute chart, upon any retest upside of that 50 period, I don't care about the volume on the retest really, since we're already beneath there, but on the rejection, if we were to see a rejection, you want to see that on as much volume as possible. Big sample size agreeing with that. On top of that, you guys would prefer to see that 50 period continuing to fade downside hard, get another psychological barrier as low as possible. With upside moves, you'll commonly hear me say, like, get some feet up underneath the move, a big psychological barrier getting up underneath as soon as possible. Well, on a downside move, bears, it's kind of similar for you guys. You want to see kind of a ceiling falling with the stock, at least a potential ceiling. Of course, it's just one factor of many. Now, let's move on here to the 4-hour chart and take a look and see if it is contextual. And it is. We find ourselves now right about halfway in between the channel, and we'll get to these levels here on the daily chart. But right now, we're just looking at the specific to the 4-hour levels, which is that 50 period moving average, sitting right about 25.13, and that 200 period sitting right about 22.13 or so. So both of those are relatively substantial moves away. We're looking at about 6.5% to the upside to make a test of that 50 period, and about 6.2% to the downside to make a test of that 200 period. So honestly, guys, this 4-hour chart is really oversimplified. You know, bulls, ideally we wouldn't really want to see a retest of that 200 period, considering it is down near 22 bucks. Kind of just want to get sucked back up for a retest of that 50. Same thing with you bears. You know, it's kind of you're getting back up toward a test of 25 to make a retest. So ideally, you'd rather just skip that, head down toward the 200 for a real test of that. It's uncommon that a chart like this is going to become so oversimplified, but that's kind of the way that the 4-hour is looking right now. So let's move on to something a little bit more advanced, but extremely contextual. The daily chart is the chart that you don't want to skip here. This is the one that has the most eyeballs and paints the most clear picture. So the daily, it's not going to show after hours movement. That's okay. But listen, what's the obvious story here on Palantir come Monday? Because to me, it's really, really obvious. 3 levels. 23 is an existing level that I've had drawn forever. Okay, and even more recently, it's been relatively contextual. 23, 2350 as a potential psychological area, and 24. Because when a stock is priced like Palantir, we're getting to the higher range of this now, but every round number is still a psychological level, even when you're kind of in the 20s, especially like the mid to low 20s. As you start moving up into the 30s, 40s, you start going off to kind of more even round numbers, but also the higher you go, you start going to 5s and 10s. With Palantir, really, I think every round number is still very psychological. So bulls, best case scenario, hold 2350, right? But use that as kind of a small, somewhat weak trampoline to get up back above 24. Okay, rip up through 24, again, high volume. If we see a retest, which I actually prefer retests, gives more confirmation, right? Lower volume test to 24, high volume pull away from 24. All right. Any downside test of 23 bulls, again, I don't mind whatever volume on the retest, just a high volume bounce away from that $23 region. Now you bears, okay? Any upside test to 24, same deal. I don't mind whatever volume it wants to make the test on, as long as we were to see a high volume rejection off 24. Hold below 2350. It's a weaker level, but it's certainly something to consider. The 50-cent increments, right? And 23 is really your target come Monday if you're a bear. You want to get down through 23 on big volume, and if we see a retest, which again I prefer, low volume, back testing 23, and then hard high volume fade the opposite direction. That's very definitive. Downside, I mean. That's very definitive, much more decisive than just like some low volume, kind of lame break through 23 and never really makes a retest. That's not decisive, right? It's just the stock fading on low volume. There's almost nothing there. And bulls, same mentality for you guys upside. Okay. Now, implied volatility, if we take a look, it is sitting in the lower range, compared to the last few months. So understand the lower IV goes, the more favorable conditions become for new potential buyers of options. Now, time for my favorite part of the video personally. I know a lot of you guys as well. What was the bias out of the options traders here on Friday as they positioned themselves heading into the weekend and into Monday? So we had a good sample size today, 420,000 total contracts. Out of those 420, we had 268,000 calls and 152,000 puts. So a relatively heavy call side bias overall here on Palantir on Friday. Now, if we break this down by time frame, the one I'm really interested in is that 0 to 20 delta range. Guys, that is going to have the highest concentration of short-term speculators. It's the far out of the money, really speculative contracts, almost gambly style. They're the cheapies, right? In that range, we had 105,000 calls and 47,000 puts. A heavy call side bias in that short-term speculation delta range of 0 to 20, as well as that relatively heavy overall call bias in the overall call put ratio. Guys, before you head out, don't forget to leave your vote in the comment section. What ticker would you like to see me cover for Monday's wildcard stock? Whichever ticker, just comment the ticker or the company name, doesn't matter. Whichever ticker gets the most votes over the weekend's batch of videos, will be the winner. And I'll cover that stock as Monday's wildcard stock. So listen, if you got value out of the video, on your way out, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.